job as caregiver, learn the lessons about how to give care, and aspire to the character of Christ. Although each reflection relates to one of these three elements, they are interspersed throughout the audiobook to give balance. As you will hear, my knowledge of caregiving comes from directing a personal care home and caring for my mother-in-law, Genevieve, with my wife, Sharon. Caregiving taught me who I was and how I could become a more godly man. As you listen to each morning and evening reflection, I hope and pray that they will direct you to a more fulfilling relationship with God, a more profound sense of the important role you fulfill, and an awareness of how God regards you, a caregiver, as utterly special and wonderful. Day 1. Morning Prayer. May I see the hidden purposes of God. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. James 1, verses 2 through 4. Every caregiver, no matter how patient, loving, and caring, eventually comes to the end of his or her rope. At those times, you want to grab hold of the one you care for and bark, "Just do as I say." With your other hand, you want to shake a fist at God and shout, "Why are you doing this to me?" For me, one of these days came when I received a call from the retirement facility where my mother-in-law, Genevieve, lived. "We think she's had a stroke," they reported. I went to Genevieve's apartment and found her disoriented, with slurred speech, and one side of her body partially paralyzed. I took her to the emergency room because I too was convinced she had had a stroke. When the neurologist was called in, she also suspected we would find brain damage, as she ordered blood tests and an MRI. My wife, Sharon, and I comforted her mother as we calmly talked about what this new level of caregiving would mean for our family and our lives. Then the neurologist came back to the room with a sheepish grin on her face. She pointed to the sheet containing the lab results and said, "We were wrong. She didn't have a stroke. She's drunk." As her words sank in, I began to realize that all of my patient and loving concern for my mother-in-law had been a waste. She had somehow fallen back into the alcoholism that had dogged her for most of her adult life. How did she get a hold of alcohol? I wondered. Doesn't she know how dangerous it is for someone in her fragile condition to drink? Doesn't she know that drinking will complicate her suspected Alzheimer's disease? Doesn't she realize the sacrifices I've made to care for her? Doesn't she appreciate anything I've done? Doesn't she realize how much her drinking insults me? All of these questions ran through my mind, and there I was, grabbing her with one hand and shaking my fist at God with the other. I yelled at her. I cursed at her. I did my best to humiliate her. As I helped Genevieve into the car to take her back home, I began to reflect on my actions. Here was a woman who bravely raised her 4 young children after her husband died. She had suffered through the untimely deaths of her 2 older children, yet continued to work and hold a home together. She was willing to sacrifice all she had for the good of her 2 remaining kids and her grandchildren. Yet all I could see was a person whom I was trying to care for, not cooperating and greatly complicating my life. I was mad at Genevieve for not making my acts of service and love to her easy, and I was mad at God for not making her obedient and cooperative. But as my yelling and cursing echoed through my head, I realized without a doubt that God had a very different purpose in mind from just our taking care of Genevieve. This was a loving and sacrificial woman with a drinking problem. I was an impatient, unloving, and uncaring man who was acting in judgmental and self-righteous ways. Just who was God trying to teach? As I drove back home, I said a prayer and humbled myself before God. Instead of yelling at God, "Why are you doing this to me?" I was beginning to realize just why God